Okay. Quick. What's the first word you think of when you hear the word salesperson?
Delight.
Delight. What else? Other words?
Charismatic.
Charismatic. Automobiles. Car salesman. Pushy. Organized. Well, we often hear words associated with salespeople like obnoxious, pushy, manipulative, devious, dishonest. You know, think back to the last time you actually placed a call to a prospect. Were they delighted to take your call, or did they tell you to call back in 6 months? Or did they compliment you on your delivery and your information, or did they not even bother to take your call? Well, it doesn't have to be that way. And part of the reason it's that way is because of something that Rick just talked about. If I challenged all of you to take your business cards out of your wallet and lay them on the table, the odds are that less than 1% of the people in this room have the word sales in their title. We are consultants, we are presidents, we are executive directors, we are realtors, we are neurosurgeons. I'm an author, I'm a consultant, and so oftentimes we don't think of ourselves as salespeople. But as Rick has pointed out, we have been selling since the time we were old enough to talk. We negotiated with our parents on whether we could watch cartoons on a weeknight, whether we could have a snack an hour before dinner. As we got a little bit older, we negotiated about whether we could have sleepovers on Friday night, and gee, that dent in the car, Dad, really wasn't my fault. And then we got into college, and where can we go to college, and so on and so on. And as Rick said, now we're negotiating with our spouses and our children and people on a day-to-day basis. So the question here is not really, am I a salesperson? The question is, how can I become more effective? Now, one of the ways to become more effective is to change our focus. How many of you have ever heard or used the term, it's a win-win situation? Everybody pretty much heard that? It's used very commonly in sales. And what the win-win means is there's something in it for you and there's something in it for me. But the truth to the sale is there is always a third-party beneficiary in every single sale that you make. As Rick said, whether that's your employees, maybe it's your family, maybe it's your charitable organization, but there's always a third-party beneficiary, and if you can keep that in mind and change your mindset to the trifecta of the win-win-win, you absolutely will become more effective. So the other challenge is we need to define what it is that we're selling. Oftentimes we're selling a product or a service, and we seem to think that we know all the features and benefits about that. But in reality, we really need to dig deeper, and we really need to clearly define what it is we're selling. Now, out of all the things that I write about defining your sale, one of the things that's the most important one to me is understanding the motivation of your buyer. If you don't know why that person wants to buy your product or your service, how can you possibly position it to them in a way that they want to say yes? There's a whole bunch of reasons why people might want to buy from you. They possibly have to replace something that's old, broken, outdated, or inconvenient. Your product or service solves a problem. If you can solve a problem, you can sell it to the world, just like our last speaker just said. The product or service fills a need or a void. Your prospects are risk takers and they see potential growth for the future. That happens with a lot of financial investors. Your prospects have outgrown the existing product due to growth. Perhaps your product is a gift to somebody. The prospect wants to be part of the in crowd, the latest thing, you know, the iPhone, something that comes out and everybody wants to have it. The product has a perceived value of equal or greater importance to its worth. The prospect has an obsession about or a collection about the product. They may be forced to purchase the product. There may be a product recall, and they've got to go out and change everything regarding their product. The competition has dropped the ball. Why can't you be the one to pick it up and run with it? And one of the last reasons why people buy from you is because they can. Money is no object. So if you have clearly defined why it is that your prospects want to purchase from you, you've got a much better chance of actually closing the deal. So one of the steps, I talk about many, many steps in the book, Let's Close a Deal. I talk about how to become a corporate spokesperson. I talk about how to get corporate sponsorship for your product, service, and cause. Talk about using the media to gain notoriety and grow your business. But one of the things that you have to do before you start pitching and preparing is you need to prepare the deal. Now, what's one of the ways that you can prepare the deal? You can work on your own packaging. You can work on how you are packaging yourself. Most of us are selling the wrong things when we go out to pitch a product or service. How many of you lead with features and benefits? Probably most of us. We start out, here's the features, here's the benefits. God forbid you start out with price, because price is a quick way to kill a deal. What should you be selling? You should actually be selling your story. Why did you become an entrepreneur? Why did you start your company? Now, I'm going to share a story with you about a gentleman who used to live here in Minneapolis, and many of you may know him or know of him. His name was Fred Betlock, and he owned a jewelry store in downtown Minneapolis called Betlock Jewelers. And when I first became an entrepreneur and hung a shingle out on my door, Fred came into my office, sat down, and said, "Christine, I am really in trouble." And I said, "How badly are you in trouble, Fred?" And he said, "I'm about $250,000 in debt." Now, I don't know about any of you, when you first started marketing your businesses and hanging your shingle on the door, but I had 3 criteria for new clients when I went out into business on my own. They needed to be able to hear thunder, see lightning, and have collateral. Well, diamonds and emeralds and pearls, oh my, he sounded like a fabulous client. So I decided to take him on. But I gave Fred a homework assignment. I told Fred to go back to his office. This was a Monday. I said he could show up on Friday at 9 o'clock, and I wanted him to come with all the stories that he could create about the products and jewelry that he'd sold or about some of the customers that he'd serviced over the years. Well, on Friday morning, Fred was sitting on my doorstep at 8:30 in the morning. He had done his homework. He came armed with dozens of stories. So we took 6 of those stories and we whittled them down to about 120 words apiece. And then we had them printed on some beautiful cardstock, and we had a little matching emblem for each story put on top of the page. And then we tied them together with a ribbon and we put them in a matching envelope. And then on the outside of the envelope, there were only 3 words. It said Betlock Jewelers, Gems. And it was a double entendre, not only for the gems that he sold in his store, but also for the gems that were going to be inside this envelope. And then we mailed these envelopes to anybody that lived within a 30-mile radius of Betlock Jeweler who had a combined household income, and again, this is over 20 years ago, of over $50,000 a year, because we knew that we weren't going to get Fred out of the red by selling the simple pieces, the engagement rings and the wedding bands. We knew we had to sell some of the higher price, $30,000, $40,000 pieces of jewelry. So on a warm October day, a number of affluent Minnesotans walked out to their mailboxes, took out their mail, there was the envelope, and when they opened it up, the first story on top was called "A Canary Made Her Cry." And the story read, "A leading Minneapolis jeweler had everything she could want, including a very strict European-bred idea of perfection. She'd have given Torval and Dean a 5.9 when every other skating judge would have given them a perfect 6.0. She found the heart of her anniversary gift at an estate sale in Bern, Switzerland, and brought it to us. A fancy 3-carat diamond, a beautiful yellow canary. We took that diamond and then we took tiny tie emeralds, which we wrapped around each corner of the ring, and they disappeared into the band. And then we put it in a box and we called her to come in. She arrived in minutes, but she was so nervous, she was too afraid to open the box, so she took it and she left. An hour passed, then 2, then 3. Finally, we could wait no longer. A clerk from our store called hers to ask, "Did she love the ring?" The clerk from her store said, "Oh, I'm sorry. She can't come to the phone right now. She's so moved. She's still crying." Within 6 weeks, 13 people, 6 of them clutching the story of a canary made her cry, waltzed into Betlock Jewelers and walked out with existing pieces or advanced orders for pieces to the tune of $325,000, walked Fred right out of the red and into the black and into his fancy new digs in Palm Springs, California, where I encourage you all to go visit him, because nobody knows the value of a story more than Fred. So when you're going to sit down with a new customer, a prospect, a former client, don't sell them on the features and benefits. Tell them your story. Tell them why you got involved in the business. Tell them how you did something remarkable for a family, or why you're a 5th-generation person involved in this family business. Tell me your story. So now what's another way that you can improve your package? You can create what I call knock your socks off marketing kits. Now this just happens to be the brochure that I helped the Minneapolis Club put together, because they wanted to appeal to a younger audience. They wanted to get some young members coming in here. So when you're handing out your marketing materials, you want your packet to pop. You don't want to be lost in the shuffle. So spend the money and put some dollars into your marketing materials. Now, what else can you do to improve your package? You can become an expert in your field. You can absolutely become the master of one trade. Now, traditionally, when we're entrepreneurs, we get pulled in a lot of different directions. And I often say we become a jack of all trades. How many feel like you're a jack of all trades? A lot of hands are going up. Someone comes in and says, "Oh, your company ought to be doing this," and all of a sudden you start doing that, and you try doing this, and you try doing that. But what you really need to become, instead of jack of all trades, is a master of one. And I'm going to give you another little story about how that can help your business. My oldest brother, Greg, is a carpenter in the tiny little city of Whitefish, Montana. And when the economy was booming, Greg was busy working on all these multi-million-dollar homes, and then the recession hit, and Greg wasn't working at all. Now, I went to visit him when this was going on, and we got loaded into Greg's pickup truck, and he started driving me around Whitefish. And what I noticed was that Greg was lovingly pointing out all this woodwork that he did on these homes. "Oh, I built that deck there on that house. Oh, I put the shutters on that one. Oh, in this house I built hardwood floors." And he'd go on and on and on. The stair railings, everything having to do with wood. And so I said, "You know, Greg, really what you are is you are a master of fine woodwork. So instead of marketing yourself as a jack of all trades carpenter, let's create some marketing materials that cause you to rise to the top of your field." So we created these special business cards on stationery that looked like wood, and we drew up this flyer, again, that looked like wood, that said nothing more than Greg, master woodworker. And guess what happened to Greg's telephone? It started ringing off the hook. Now, people would get him in their homes to put in their hardwood floors, and while he was there, they'd say, "Oh, Greg, by the way, do you know how to fix a broken furnace, or a window's fallen off in my basement?" Or they'd come up with lists of long things that had to be done. And did Greg know how to do those things? And could he? Absolutely. He did them, and he charged for them. But he wasn't putting a single amount of his resources. And as entrepreneurs, our resources are our time, our money, and our people, if we have any, that work for us. He wasn't putting any of his resources into marketing himself as a carpenter. he was getting spin-off business. And as of this very moment, my brother is working on a multi-million-dollar home outside of the city of Whitefish with 3 subcontractors underneath him. So that is the value of creating what I call niche notoriety. Put yourself as the expert in your field, the go-to person that everyone will turn to when they need your type of product or service. Now, there's one last thing I'm going to talk about today, because our time is fairly limited in terms of improving your own package, and that is what I call working your weaknesses. There's an author out there that made millions of dollars selling a book called Building Your Strengths, but you know, I'm going to use an example of myself. I'm a golfer. And I go to the practice range, not nearly enough. But when I do, I take 4 clubs out of my bag. I take my 8-iron, my 6-iron, my 3-wood, and my driver. And I go position myself there on the practice range, and I hit ball after ball after ball straight out into the field. And invariably, all these people will walk by and go, "Oh, Christine, you've got such a beautiful swing." And I always say, "Thank you." And then I get out on the golf course. And hopefully I hit my beautiful drive, which I usually do, and then hopefully I will hit my second shot. But if it's 30 to 40 to 50 feet short of the green, guess what happens to me? I chunk my ball into the sand trap. I try to get out of the sand trap, I chip over the green. I get on the green, I 3-putt. Why? Because I keep working my strengths. Instead of going to the practice range and working on my putting and chipping, I do what feels good to me. I do what I get compliments on. And so really what we need to do is analyze where our weaknesses are and try to work those weaknesses. So we've talked a little bit about packaging ourselves and our products, but now it's time to come to make connections. And that is really what Club Entrepreneur is all about. And that's really how we get an enormous amount of our business in this world. Now, we've all heard about the theory of 6 degrees of separation. If I chose you and we chatted and within 6 people we'd find out that we somehow knew each other. I think that's 5 too many. I think you really need only 1 degree of separation. If you really want to be closing deals, you have to find a person who knows the person that you're pitching to in order to close the deal. Now, I am going to give you a great story from my past about how I turned a resounding no into a very positive yes. For about 4 years, I used to host a celebrity golf tournament here in the Twin Cities to raise money for my cause, which is breast cancer research. And we always were looking for a headlining celebrity that could not only play golf, but who could entertain our guests at the event. And one particular summer, I was at the national convention for an association I belong to, the National Speakers Association, and the headline entertainment for that group that particular weekend was none other than Grammy Award-winning country western singer Larry Gatlin with the Gatlin brothers. Now, Larry has kind of faded off a little bit into the distance, but at the height of his career, he won Best Artist of the Year, Best Album of the Year, Best Song of the Year. The Gatlin brothers were a pretty big thing back in their day. And I also happen to know that Larry was about a 2 or 3 handicap golfer. So I sat there in the auditorium, probably just like those of you sitting way back in the back of the room, and thought, God, wouldn't it be cool to get to know Larry Gatlin? Well, there was probably about 1,000 other people there that night that thought the same thing, because I couldn't get anywhere near him. But I did get the name of the gentleman who had been responsible for bringing Larry to the event that night. His name is Nito Quabain, and I had networked my way through the National Speakers Association enough to know Nito quite well at that point. So I get back to Minneapolis, and about 3 months later, I open the Star Tribune, and there's a little announcement in the variety section that Larry Gatlin is coming to town to star in a play at the State Theater called The Civil War. And I thought, wow, I'm going to call Nito. So I put some calls out to Nito. I sent him some emails asking him if he could possibly make an introduction to me for Larry. And this was about 3 weeks out. And so the days passed and the weeks passed, and I'd put more calls in. Finally, we got to be about 2 nights before Larry was scheduled to come into town, and my phone rang. Now, Nito, by the way, is Lebanese and did not grow up in our country. So I answered the phone, and this was the response. Yeah, Christine, this is Nito Cobain, and I'm so sorry I haven't called you, but I have been out of the country, and I have no time to talk to you right now, but Larry Gatlin's going to call you. Good luck and goodbye. Click. I literally had my hand on the telephone receiver when it rang again. And I picked it up and I said, hello, this is Christine. And I heard the biggest Texas twang I have ever heard in my life. And all apologies to any of you who might be from the South as I tell the rest of this story. Yeah, Christine. Yeah, this is Larry Gatlin. And I don't know who you are or why I'm calling you, but Nito Cobain asked me to call you, and I do anything Nito tells me to do, so why am I calling you? Well, I was so, flustered. I had no time to prepare. I hadn't even known he was going to call me that I vomited all over him. I started telling him, wouldn't it be great for him to come up here and play golf at the historic Minnetonka Club, and wouldn't it be great for him to entertain our guests? And I went on and on and on and on and on. And when I finally stopped and came up for air, there was a long pause. And Larry said, Christine, I get asked to play in about 200 of these golf tournaments every year, and I'm sure your cause is a good one, and by the way, what's your cause? Well, again, I hadn't thought of the win-win-win. I was so busy thinking about what's in it for me and what's in it for him that I forgot about my charity. So I told him I was a breast cancer survivor and I was raising money for the American Cancer Society, and Larry said, oh, Christine, congratulations, you're a survivor. You're a survivor, I'm a survivor, we're all survivors. He goes, I'm going to just share a little story with you. It's public knowledge. I'm a recovering alcoholic and drug addict. And I got to tell you, I've only got 2 objectives at this point in my life. I want to spend time with my family. Oh, did I tell you I got a brand new little baby granddaughter? Her name's Paula. She's just the cutest little thing. And then my other objectives, I need to make some money for my family and my band. I lost quite a bit of it, back in the day. So I'm sorry, I'm really going to have to say no. Well, then I did what I always do when this situation arrives. I do something called the 3 R's. I retreat, I reevaluate, and I reapproach. I quickly thought about what Larry had said to me, and I quickly thought of some solutions. Now, just that morning, Sun Country Airlines had donated 5 round-trip airline tickets to my golf tournament. So I said, Larry, I've been listening to you. Now, I understand that one of your objectives is you want to spend time with your family. So how would you feel if I flew you, your wife, your daughter, your son-in-law, and little baby Paula up to Minneapolis to watch you play golf? Well, there was a long pause, and then Larry burst into laughter. He said, Sugar, I got to hand it to you. No one has ever made me an offer like that before. But my little Paula, she's only 6 months old. I don't think she wants to be flying to Minneapolis, so I'm sorry, sweetie. I'm still going to have to say no. Well, I did it again. I retreated. I reevaluated. I reapproached. I said, Larry, I've been listening to you. Now, you said you wanted to make some money for your family and your band. Is that right? He said, absolutely. Well, it turned out we had always had money in our budget for this Keyline Celebrity. We just never had to use it before. Amy Grant, Hootie and the Blowfish, many famous people had come and played in my golf tournament and donated their time. But I had some money in there. In fact, it had accumulated over the years because that budget had never been used. So I said, Larry, I heard you. How about if I offer you $10,000? Well, now you're talking, sweetheart. You must have some kind of media kit on that golf tournament of yours. Why don't you bring it down here to the Grand Hotel? I promise you, I will take a look at this tonight and I will get back to you. Well, then I flew into high gear. I did something I call percolating the deal. Percolating the deal is putting that something special extra together that gets the person in a position where they just say, I just have to have it. So I started to create a knock your socks off gift basket for Larry. Now, I had a profile on Larry. I knew that Larry was a husband, a father, a grandfather, recovering alcoholic, golfer, Grammy Award-winning singer, songwriter. I had all these profiles. So I immediately drove over to the Minnetonka Club where they hosted our golf tournament. Just the day before, the USA Today sports section, the headline had blared, "Titleist introduces new Pro V1 golf ball and takes the nation by storm." So I ran up to the golf pro and I said, "Doug, do you have any of these new hot Pro Vs that just came out?" And he said, "Christine, we got a case in and they sold out in a minute. I don't have a single ball." I said, "Doug, you've got to find some for me." I told him what was going on. So he sheepishly led me into his office and pulled out his little private drawer. And there in his drawer was his little box of 12 balls that he'd kept for his personal stash. And he gave them to me. But as I was walking out, I saw this little display. And hanging on the display were 2 little leather pink golf shoes for babies. So I bought them and I wrote a little note, "Dear Paula, I hope you grow up to be as good a golfer as your granddaddy." And then I zoomed over to Barnes & Noble and bought Chicken Soup for the Golfer's Soul, and I had a story in that book, so I autographed it. And then I came downtown to Minneapolis to the IDS Center, where back in those days, the best coffee and chocolate shops were situated in the IDS. And I wrapped this all up into a big basket, and I drove over to the Grand Hotel. And then I did something else I do when I am making a pitch and doing my preparation. Instead of playing devil's advocate and thinking about all the things that can go wrong with my sale, I play angel's advocate. I try to think about all the things that can go right with my sale. And so one of the things that I knew had to go right was that Larry needed to get this basket. So I paid the concierge an extra $20 to personally deliver that basket to Larry's room. That night my phone rang. It was Larry, and he said, "Christine, that's quite a media kit you've got there, darling. Not only am I coming to your golf tournament and playing in it, but I am looking forward to doing so. Honey, we got a deal. And not only that, there are 2 tickets for you in the front row of the State Theater. You come down there, watch my show, and afterwards we'll go out to the Capitol Grill for coffee and dessert." So let's take that whole scenario, that whole story that I just gave you. How did I get from no to yes? I had to go back and look at my third-party beneficiary. There had to be a reason for me to be making that sale. I retreated, I reevaluated, I reapproached twice. I percolated the deal by putting together a knock-your-socks-off gift basket, and then I played angel's advocate and thought about all the things that could go right with that sale. So you need to set yourself up so that you cannot fail. That is how I approach every sale. I never take the first no as the final no. I always go back and think, what was I not listening to? What did I miss? Is there a way I can overcome this objective? There are lots and lots of things that you can do to close and pitch deals, but there's one last thing that you must do in order to succeed. And I learned this thing through very painful yet very powerful experience. I learned this thing from 20 years ago at the age of 40, being diagnosed with cancer and being told I had about 6 months to live at that time in my life. I looked back at an experience of having a job with benefits, bonuses, salaries, commission, and leaving that job to no real job at all, just a dream I had of becoming an entrepreneur and starting my own business. And I've taken a very big risk. I'm going to share a story with you. 2 weeks ago, I was diagnosed with cancer again. I will be having surgery on June 18th and starting chemotherapy. And I have realized that the path to pleasure in my life has always been through pain, that it has always been in the risks that I have taken in my life that have gotten me to the point where I can stand up here before you today and tell you how to close deals. You play this game with courage. the courage to take risks in your life. There's an author, Gail Sheehy, who wrote a national award-winning book called Passages. And in that book, she was doing the research for it when she came across 13 people who had a quality that she has coined a sense of high well-being. Now, you might imagine, as certainly I have, and absolutely as she had, what would those 13 people have in common that got them to this place of ecstasy in their life? And at first, it seemed like they had absolutely nothing in common. Some of them had advanced educational degrees, PhDs, master's degrees. 2 of them had not graduated from high school. Some of them were extremely successful. A couple of them were on welfare. Some of them were very attractive. Others were quite plain. And 3 of them had absolutely no religious affiliation whatsoever, which might come as a surprise to some of you. But then a pattern started to emerge. And it was there in 1 through 5, and then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And as an author, I can only imagine Gail Sheehy's anxiety as she gathered up the notes to the 13th person, Gordon Mortensen, and she sequestered herself in her loft for the evening. And she had to be asking herself the question, will it be here? Will Gordon substantiate my theory? And as she pored through the notes on Gordon, it wasn't there, and it wasn't there, and it wasn't there. And then she got to the last 2 pages of the notes on Gordon, and there it was. Gordon had told the interviewer, "Tell Dr. Sheehy that when I was 24 years old, I took an enormous risk in my life. The risk was so personal that neither Dr. Sheehy nor Gordon Mortensen have ever revealed it to the public. And it's because of this risk that I took in my life," said Gordon, "that I have come to this place that she calls a sense of high well-being. You play this game with courage." David Landis, who wrote the book The Wealth and Poverty of Nations, was challenged on why some nations thrive and others fail. And he examined every culture going all the way back to ancient Mesopotamia to the current cultures of today. And you think that he's not going to have a reason. And as you pile through his 500, 600-page book, you get to the last 2 pages, and he sums it up. And he said, "It's not guns, germs, or steel that make the difference between the rich and the poor. It's not power sources, natural resources, education, any of the things that you might have read about or believed to be true. In this world, it's all in belief. In this world, the optimists have it. The optimists have the ability to see things others can't see. Transformation, art, revival, renewal." And then he goes on to say, "The pessimists had the lone consolation of knowing they failed and being able to say they were right all along." You play this game with courage. So the next time you come to a fork in the road, don't take the path of least resistance. Paths without obstacles rarely go anywhere. Instead, take the road along the cliff, the one without the guardrail, because I can promise you this, that the sheer exhilaration of the ride and the pride that you feel when you finish will fill you with even more pride and give you even more courage to take even more risks. And that one day will bring you more money, but every day will leave you utterly more fulfilled. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Whew, thanks.